Okay, we're live.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Finance Committee. I'll call to order today's meeting. It's Monday, August 24th, 2020. The time's 4:30. I'm Lauren McNally, 5th Ward City Council Person and Chairwoman. I'm going to go through today's roll call. For everyone on the line here, Rick Deek, Jennifer Ozinger, Samantha Turner, Jeff Limbian, Anita Davis, Basha Adamczak, Chuck Shasho, Daniel Blakely, Don Turnage, Demaine Kitchen, Aaron Bishop, James Vivo, Julius Oliver, Kyle Mizak, Mike Durkin, Mike Ray, Nikki Posterly, Tito Brown, Valencia Morrow, Chief Finley, Chief Lees, Jean Leeson, and Sharon Woodbury. Got everybody? So we will go ahead and get started here under ordinances. Under number one, I believe it's equipment for the water department. I think Dan, you're filling in today. Does anyone have questions on this piece of equipment? Okay, I'm gonna keep going then. On item number two, this is looks like I think it's a renewal for our professional services agreement with YSU for this particular service. Does anyone have questions for Nikki or our economic development team on this? Anita?
This is a thing that's drawn down by the hour. Is that correct? Nikki?
Through the chair, 2 and 3 kind of go together. Number 3 is the renewal of the mapping services that we use for our department. Number 2 is an additional software program added to that we want to start using, which is called Real Property Information System, where it's kind of like a geocoding mapping where we can start mapping data throughout different city departments for planning. So it's not a drawdown like you would think through CDBG. This is the amount of the agreement. I'm sorry. Yes, it's a flat fee.
Okay.
For both.
Are there any changes to the scope of work from what we've had in the past?
Not for number 3. Number 3 is the same. Number 2 is the only one that's different. Number 2 is a new software program, which is why I put them here instead of going through Board of Controls, because collectively they're over the $25,000 threshold. So number 2 is Real Property Information System that Mike Durkin uses for demos. What we want to do is be able to use it for planning and economic development.
And what would be the availabilities or capabilities for yours versus, what makes it useful to you versus, just.
It's through the chair. It's a whole planning program that we're looking at. So what makes it different for us is what Mike does now. He's able to map out throughout the city where the demos are taking place. Using this Real Property Information System, we can start layering those mappings. So when we do economic development projects, we can see where the tax delinquencies are. Is it city owned? Is it county owned? Is it residential tax delinquencies? We can also see, we can use it with the fire chief. Was there arson there? What we're doing now is we're working through residential registry as we're putting together our strategy for the housing study. So we're using that for residential registry as well with the landlords, so that we know for our housing strategy, when we start moving forward with implementing that, where are those neighborhoods that we can start impacting. We can use it, we're using it for our HUD dollars. So where are we impacting neighborhoods with HUD dollars? It's a complete mapping system that shows you different layers of implementation, different layers of other city services that you can see all in one spot, in one source. We've talked to Harry about using it with water disconnection. So are we disconnecting water with a landlord that's registered in one of our target areas for housing redevelopment? So there's a vast number of I guess, strategies that we can use through this system to help with our planning.
So what code enforcement uses it for, or what that contract looks like for this service, it's not enough? It's not buying enough of the program, or what? How come we need more? Why is it that we need more?
We need more because initially it was just code enforcement. That's what Mike was using it for, was just code enforcement. We're using it again as a whole citywide planning vehicle.
And it can't be used, like the current contract can't be expanded for what it is?
I've not seen what he had with Mike. I proposed this through the law department, whether we should use 3 contracts or 1. And also talk to finance, and it was decided to use it, to separate it out into 3 contracts. So the mapping, the RPIS with ourselves, and then let Mike finish out his demo contract.
Okay, so do we make sure there's no overlap then? I think Kyle, you have your hand up.
Yes, through the chair. Mike Durkin uses it for 2 separate practices across the city. One is being charged off to rental property, where they are overlapping all the different rental properties across the city. So unfortunately, the actual exercise that YSU is contractually entered into with Mike Durkin is for specified services. The other one is for his actual demolition. And so, as Nikki has said earlier, we're going to start stacking some of these. I know some of these services are not being recreated. They're in essence providing us further detailing so that we can actually generate better mapping. We hope next year, when we do sit down with them, given that we've entered into the arrangement for the code enforcement starting at the calendar year, that this is on a fiscal year, that next year when we sit down for the following calendar and fiscal year, we want to see if any of these services can be overlapped and potentially see a reduction in cost. But right now, there are strictly different services that Nikki's asking for, and we will see if there are synergies next year, given that they'll actually be looking at what we have able to get from these additional services, and then looking at what we're getting on the rental property and the code enforcement.
So what you're going to use it for, Nikki, is under rental registration is different than what Mr. Durkin uses it for under rental. That seems overlapping.
Through the chair, part of it will overlap. A small portion of it will overlap. Right now, Mike's using it for rental registration for his department, but we're using it for rental registration, landlord registration, so we can put together along with our housing strategy that we work through with YNDC. So we want to make sure that when we're working with developers and putting housing units in, that we're only using those sources that have come through the city, that the city's vetted, that we know these landlords are worthy landlords, and that our citizens don't end up in these same type of slum situations that they're in before. So that's the piece of the landlord registry we're looking at it for. But we're also looking at it in part of a whole neighborhood plan. So it's not just a rental registration, but we're looking at it as a neighborhood plan. Again, we can look at crime statistics through this. We can overlap arson. We can overlap, like we said before, disconnections. We can overlap land usage, what the delinquencies are, so that we can start plotting different areas of neighborhood that we can have impact. Where are the services going? And we can use this system to do that, to geo-track that, and to have that data. We can target, I know one of the other council people wanted to know about the different group homes and sober living, and we can start tracking those to see where they're concentrated at. all of that can be useful information.
Yeah, I mean, it all sounds like a powerful tool. There's no doubt about it. It just seems like it would make sense to sit down with YSU and have that overall plan where it touches all of those departments and you have one contract with them for if the program can do all of those things, you have one plan with them, you won't be overlapping things and you won't be working in silos. You'll actually be able to do that. And I can't imagine that they wouldn't sit down with us before the end of the year, even though that Durkin's version of the contract isn't up till the end of the year. We're looking to expand our services with them. So I'm a little confused there. There's Mike.
Yeah, through the chair. I do recall that it's my understanding we've had this $25,000 a year contract with YSU's Center for Urban Studies to do all this mapping and planning, and they do a variety of departments use them for a variety of stuff. That seems normal. So I'm just guessing the ease of contracts and doing contracts in my private sector job. I mean, we're just decided to do a separate contract just for the ease of then extending that contract because they're two different services. Is that why we went that path? Nikki, was it just the ease of setting it up that way?
Through the chair, that is correct. Prior to submitting, I vetted this through the law department, and this was the suggested way to present this through the law department because it's a different software program that we did not encompass in this initial contract that we're asking to renew. And because Mike Durkin is already using a portion of it, they didn't want to combine it with his contract and thought it was better that we just separate it out, go finish the year out this way, and then going forward, as Kyle said, then we can add on all the city services.
Julius?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So is YSU going to come and do a presentation and give us kind of a demo of exactly what we're getting here so we can see it for ourselves, get the information firsthand?
Through the chair, the YSU did a demo to the department with the department heads about a week or so ago, and I've been working with the committee chair to do a presentation to the Cped committee. So I'm presenting this to you now. We can definitely put it in committee and do a presentation, but I'm presenting it to you now. We would have loved to have the presentation done prior to this, but I wanted to at least get it on record that we want to have this contract with YSU for this program.
Julius?
Just follow up for the future. Wouldn't it be, kind of good to have council involved with the conversation up until this point rather than the other way around?
Through the chair, I've kept the Cped, I've talked to the committee chair and yourself about this program and about this contract. It was just a scheduling thing that we didn't have the Cped committee meeting prior to this. But again, I needed to get this on record so that either we can put it in committee or we can decide on it. But I couldn't continue to wait with YSU to present this. So they're ready to do a presentation. They've been ready. And we've had conversations. I've had it with several council people to make sure that we were ahead of this so that it wouldn't be a surprise. And it's not an emergency. I just want to make sure that I presented it so that we can either decide on it or put it in committee.
So is it a separate program then that you're contracting out than the program that we, like the software that we currently have? And is it a different person doing the work for you from YSU than is doing the work for code enforcement department that we currently have?
Through the chair, it's the same person. It's the same person. And that's why I put it to council instead of BOC, because we have 3 different contracts, but with the same person. And that's why I wanted to put, so it didn't look like we were circumventing council to go through BOC to do separate contracts to meet that 25,000 threshold. So because collectively it's the same person and it's over 25,000, we're presenting it now and presenting it this way.
Anita?
Through the chair, just out of curiosity, how many contracts do we have with YSU in this general topic area? How many do we have?
Kyle,
To the chair, we have 2 right now outside of the 25,000 that is gonna, that we're renewing with regards to the mapping. The first one is for housing code mapping for demolition. And then the second one is the housing code contract for rental property. The housing code contract is for $7,500. It's on a calendar year, so it will expire at the end of December. And the mapping for rental property is roughly $9,800, and that will expire at the end of December.
And so our total of this were to be approved at some point, a total with YSU would be?
To the chair, if you take those 2 that is being paid by Mr. Durkin's department through environmental sanitation, it's $17,300.
Plus,
And then we're always in contract for that $25,000 on a fiscal year basis for regards to mapping. So if you add that, we're at 42,300. And then if you add this new one, as Nikki pointed out, because we're going to go beyond the $25,000, it will take it up to $55,000 approximately.
oh, we're paying someone a salary, you know. Okay, thank you, through the chair.
Mike,
Sorry, excuse me, through the chair. Yeah, that is a substantial amount. I think but the thing to keep in mind is not only is that close to someone's salary, but this software is very specialized, and you need someone to be able to operate that software. I think, we're working with John Brolich at YSU over the years from that program at YSU and doing things that you were avoiding the salary. And then we're also probably just paying for a share of usage because they're subscribing to all those software packages or maintaining that, and we're paying for the slice that we need for that expertise. I'm guessing that's how it costs out. Is that correct, Kyle?
Kyle,
To the chair, that is correct. And remember, the 25,000 that we enter into, that is based on usage. I mean, they ultimately have to have requests from the department heads for certain types of mapping. Yes, there is an admin fee, but some of those costs associated with that contract are for actual work performed. So if we don't have the requests, we won't be billed on that total amount.
Samantha,
Thank you. Through the chair. First, and Cal, did you mention the grant writing as well that they do for us?
Kyle, you're muted.
Excuse me, through the chair. Grant writing is an actual separate contract having not any direct link with this particular software and the mapping. So yes, that was not part of what I rolled up for that total to come up to the $55,000. The grant writing is separate.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I have just another question in regards to this piece of legislation. So in theory, this sounds like really good, but I feel like there's a few missing pieces, as in like who is administrating this across the departments. And we talk a lot about the rental registration and landlords, but I haven't heard anything like about the realtor. So if I could ask for this to go to a second reading, that would be most helpful. Because I have like 5 questions here, but I don't know if this is a place for us to get, deep into the weeds with these questions. I don't know if that Basha or Julius.
Well, a second reading would be the exact same meeting that we're sitting in here, so it wouldn't matter question-wise.
It would go back to the committee and then come forward.
Not for a second reading. You'd have to send it to committee. That's a separate request. That's a different request.
Send it back to committee. Basha or Julius.
Okay. Basha,
Thank you through the chair. Just I wanted to make a quick comment. Speaking with Nikki previously about this program, I mean, I feel it offers a lot of great tools that we need. And it was explained to me that it could even be tailored to us individually in the wards for whatever information we may be, looking for. So I am definitely in favor of this, but if my colleagues do have more questions and want to discuss this further, I mean, we can put it into the Cped committee to discuss it, and then bring it, back before all of council. And as Nikki mentioned, the reason that she did this was to make sure, she doesn't just send it straight to BOC, since it is one vendor being paid, multiple amounts exceeding, that dollar threshold. But if that's what my colleagues want, I'm seeing people shake their head yes, we'll send it to Cped then.
I think it sounds like a really powerful tool. I can support the program for sure. And I know it's been super helpful when we've used it in other departments. I just want to make sure that that we don't end up siloing ourselves for our departments, and that there is real coordination among our departments, and that we're not overlapping work or services from YSU or even amongst our departments for that matter. So that's more of just a general concern, I guess, for the way that we're presenting this. Julius?
Thank you, through the chair. I agree with my colleagues. I just wanted to ask Nikki, can YSU be prepared to present in that Cped meeting once it's scheduled?
Through the chair, he's prepared. We're ready.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anita, I'll just get your feedback since you're on the committee here.
Oh, no, I was absolutely, I wanted this to go to CPEP for a lot more instruction. I want clarification, because I think I'm hearing two things, which is YSU will do this research for us, not that we would be using any of this software. And I just want to make sure it's clear that we're not using the software. They're communicating with YSU, and that YSU is the one who's doing the actual work. So I think we need to go to a committee for that. CPED.
Okay. Anything further on number 2? This is just for number 2. This is the new contract. Samantha?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't have a question. Number 2 was for the current grass cutting that,
No,
right?
no, number 2 is the new contract. Number 3 is the renewal of the contract.
Okay.
So we're good on number 2. We're going to send that one back, we're going to send that to Cped committee and schedule that in conjunction with YSU to present this new portion. And then number 3, we'll move down to number 3. This is the renewal of the current contract we have with them, or a current contract that we have with them. Are there questions on this particular one? Okay, we look good there. So I'm going to keep going down to number 4. And are there any questions for Chuck on this one? Don't see any, so I'm going to keep going. Number 5, also for Chuck. Questions? Okay, we look good. Number 6, Chuck. Questions for him? All right, you're getting off easy tonight, Chuck. Let's see, number 7.
I'm sorry, through the chair.
Oh, yes, Samantha.
Number 6, Chuck, if you could send the work order list from that sewer line, just as like I've previously asked for in the other ones, that would be great. That's all. That's my only my only request before Wednesday's meeting.
You good with that, Chuck?
Through the chair. Yep.
Okay. Number 7, then. I think questions for Mr. Durkin on this piece. Anita?
Yes, through the chair. That building is was valued at 160,000 on the auditor's website, and we spent almost a third to demo it. There was no chance for that building to be able to be renovated.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Mike.
Through the chair, that really wasn't my decision. The fire chief deemed it as an emergency demolition, and I facilitated the demolition. That structure had been a problem for us for some time, since last year. The parapet wall and bricks fell from the structure. We contacted the owner last year by certified mail. We tried to call. They did not do anything for a whole year. More bricks fell. I contacted the fire chief. We looked at the building. He even went up in a ladder truck to check out the roof. He assessed everything and said that this building needs to come down, and that's what we did.
Anita?
Through the chair, on follow up to Chief Finley. So Chief Finley, you're saying that that building was, as it sat there, was a danger to the public?
Through the chair. That's correct. When I got up, first of all, like Mike Durkin said, the parapet wall fell last year, and it was just bricks all on Oak Street. On Oak Hill. And so June, we went up in a ladder truck to look at the roof, and the roof itself, the entire roof was sagging in towards the middle. That right there is pretty much all I needed to see, because winter's coming up. Because that's a square roof, all the snow is going to sit in there. That's considered a static load. If that roof would have came in, all 4 walls are going to go north, south, east, and west. The wall, this wall that's closest to the river is going to fall in the river. The wall in the back is going to fall in the river. The other wall is going to fall in the parking lot. But the front wall, that's coming on Oak Street. Without a doubt, that wall is coming on Oak Street. So if anybody is walking, if anybody's sitting there at that light, and most of all, the big thing was, if there was a fire and my firefighters went in there, that building could collapse. Without a doubt. There was zero doubt in my mind when I got up on the ladder truck to look at that roof and seeing the extent of how much failure that roof was going through. And he didn't want to do anything with the building. Yes, I put it up for absolutely, without a doubt, unequivocally, I put it up to be demoed.
Anita?
My last follow-up. So it was a dangerous building. There's a danger, but the other portion in your decision-making process was that the owner wasn't doing anything with the building?
Honestly, I didn't, through the chair. I mean, if he was going to do something and physically do something to the building, okay, then maybe I would have gave him a chance. But when he's not even responding, and then we got a vacant building standing there, and he's not making any effort to at least structurally make sure this building is squared away, then yes, I have to make the decision on behalf of the safety of my firefighters especially, and then the community at large.
Thank you.
Julius? Oh, you're still muted.
Thank you, through the chair. So the owner of that building was just recently offered $200,000 to sell the building, and he turned it down. The building, in my opinion, was not in the condition to be torn down. And no, I'm not a fire chief. I'm not any type of demolition expert, or I'm an engineer in the Army, and that's about all you get. So I know how to put a structure up. But in my opinion, it's been worse buildings in the city that have been renovated. The building had to be stripped down to the bones, so the mold wasn't a factor. If somebody was going to renovate the building, which still could have been saved, they obviously would have replaced the roof. We have buildings on Federal right now with bricks falling onto the sidewalk where people walk every day. And that's not considered an emergency demolition. So I'm just wondering, like, from the time I heard about this legislation for the 48,000, from the time a media member called me and asked me how I felt about it, the building was literally torn down the next morning after the media contacted me. The building was once declared a flood zone. Now, all of a sudden, it's not a flood zone anymore. So it seems to me there's some type of end goal in mind that this building had to be torn down quickly in order to get to that end goal. Because the building was offering to be sold. People were trying to buy it. People wanted it. People wanted to save it. The administration knew about other people that wanted to purchase the building. The building could have went into foreclosure. There's a multiplicity of things that could have happened. The building was set back so far off the sidewalk that it wasn't a danger of anybody being hit by bricks from the bricks falling. Unlike the buildings on Federal, where the bricks fall on the sidewalk where people walk every day. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, what made this building so much of a hazard that it had to be torn down a day after the media found out about it. And it was changed from a flood zone to not being a flood zone anymore. Is there a whole plan in place that we're missing?
I'd like to answer that if I could, through the chair.
Chief Finley?
Okay. When you say that building didn't present a danger, I beg to differ. I walked over and seen how many bricks just last year when the wind pushed the parapet off, and there were bricks on Oak Hill from that building. So if the front wall, if it let loose because the roof collapsed, you can't tell me that if somebody been walking Oak Street or sat there at the light, because there's a light there, sat there at the light, somebody could have been hurt or killed. And then it would have been, well, Chief, if you knew it was bad, why didn't you have it tore down?
Chief,
this is my response. This is my responsibility. And you're right, Jules. There are other buildings in the city, but here's the thing: the minute that I find out that a building is structurally unsound or unsafe for my firefighters and for the community at large, I issue an EDR for it immediately. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because I'm trying not to jackpot the city, because if they find out that where the city knew this was unsafe, why didn't anybody do anything about it? That's my responsibility.
Okay, Chief.
Julius?
What I would ask of the mayor or administration, period, is then that we hold ourselves as a city to the same standards we hold our property owners and our citizens, because we own buildings that bricks are falling off of them right now as we speak. And we need to bring our own buildings up to code, and we're not doing it. Not let alone, we need to cut our own grass before we fine people for not cutting their grass. So how is it that we able to take down somebody else's property because it's unsafe, but we're not holding ourselves responsible for buildings that we own and properties that we own that aren't safe?
Through the chair.
Mayor?
Councilman, I will explain to you, there's just the same property, another property on Andrews Avenue that we took down the same way. We get blamed for when those bricks fall off. What's the city doing about this? And we took action on this. This was the safety of this building to take it down. I don't care if it was Anthony's on the River or on Andrews Avenue. Once it becomes an EDR, it's a safety issue for the citizens. That's what we desire to do. Now, what issues about who had money or what offers on the table, I don't get involved in contract issues between private owners. You can go to jail for that. So we do what we do as a process. The same process we did on Andrews Avenue, the same process we did here on Anthony's on the River. It is where we are. Now the counties can decide how they deal with the process of how much is owed or how much is worth. We took care of our part as a community. And if you have bricks falling off a city building, by all means, let us know. We will take care of it, and we have to be responsible. But remember, the we is not just this administration. That is city council. You appropriate the money, it will administrate it. If we need more money, we'll have to come to you and ask you for that. So if you see it, let us know, and then we can talk about you appropriating money to fix those things.
What happened with the whole
Julius?
flood zone not a flood zone anymore? Why isn't it a flood zone anymore?
Chuck, can you answer that for him, please?
Chuck?
Yes, through the chair, just for the record, I just wanted to state that nothing within the floodplain designations have changed on that property. The building itself is located in the Zone X floodplain, which defines a flood zone that's protected by a levee generally. And also the site itself is located in a floodplain with a floodplain elevation of approximately 843, which is a Zone 8E. So development is permitted to occur in a floodplain with certain provisions. Demolition is an activity that is allowed to take place within a floodplain as long as it's not in the floodway and you don't alter the water course at all. So this was a situation where none of that took place.
So another structure through the chair can be
Please.
built on that ground.
Chuck?
Through the chair, a structure could be placed, yes, as long as they meet our local floodplain ordinances, which is basically a 1 foot elevation of freeboard, they call it. Basically, they would have to put any inhabitable space 1 foot above that elevation of 843.
Okay, last question through the chair.
Go ahead, Julius.
So I spoke to the mayor, I spoke to Nikki, I spoke to the fire chief the day before this building came down. I expressed that I didn't want the building torn down, and I had people that were interested in the building that possibly could renovate the building that were going to renovate the building. At no point did anybody inform me that this building was coming down the next day, the next morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, it was coming down. I asked each one of y'all not to tear this building down. So how is it that it came down 6 o'clock in the morning the next morning and nobody said, oh, we tearing this building down the next morning? It was a surprise that it was even on the council packet. So how wasn't the information there that this building was coming down the next morning?
Through the chair.
Mayor?
Mike Durkin, you can answer that, please?
Sure. Through the chair. There were more bricks that had fallen in the interim. The demolition was actually scheduled for Friday. It was on council's agenda for today. However, in the interim, more bricks had fallen. I contacted the fire chief and I told him, and he told me, get the building down. He goes, I'm not comfortable with it. And so we're taking it down. And that was the end of the story. I contacted the demo contractor. He was able to come there and start demolition. That was it.
And through the chair, Julius, that was I'm sorry, Julius, that was after I talked to you. That was after I talked to you that I was told that there are still bricks falling off this building.
So after you talked to me that evening, a citizen was walking on by the building. Hey, some more bricks fell off. Oh, we got to get this down tomorrow morning, right away. That's how that happened.
Well, here's the thing. I told him to get it down. I'm sorry, through the chair. I told him to get it down. All I say was get it down. Now, when they decide to do it is up to them. But if I'm being told a building that I think is unsafe anyway, and I hear that there's still bricks falling off of it, yes, I want it down. I want it down immediately. I didn't know it was going to be the very next day, but I do want it down. I honestly do want it down immediately.
So bricks and chimneys that's falling into my constituencies' driveways, that's not an emergency. But this building that wasn't bothering nobody was an emergency. But Ms. Johnson can't get the house torn down to her, next door to her, with the chimney falling in her driveway, right?
But if I know about it,
what's the priority?
If I know about it, well, that's not fair, because here's the thing. I'm one person, unless you want me to walk every neighborhood in the city. If I'm told about a building, I go out, Chief, I take a look at the building.
This ain't even on you,
Julius.
Chief. It's not even on you, Chief.
Anita.
The chair, who did the demo?
Through this chair, Steel Valley Contracting.
Steel Valley Contract. Okay, and are we going to be assessing the owner?
Through the chair, I believe that's the way we will do things, the way we do it all the time.
Okay, so, and this owner is already at $5,000 in delinquent taxes on a building that may or may not have been salvageable. So now we're going to, so if that's not paid, then will the city be taking ownership, Mayor?
Through the chair, that actually is not how it works. That's up to the county prosecutor and the treasurer and the auditor what they want to do at a property that's assessed the tax value. Go ahead.
Anita.
But the assessment is owed to us, not to the county.
In direct response to the chair, the assessment, when I meant assessment of the taxes that you mentioned, 5,000 of the taxes. Yeah, the assessment would be owed to us as well. But there's going to be what's the value of the property versus the taxes that's owed on it. So, but that's up to the prosecutor's office to sit with the treasurer to see if this is a property that's worthy to go to foreclosure. Now, I don't know actually how the legal process works with that. That's why I'll let the county prosecutor deal with that and determine what's next for this project.
I'm sorry, don't we start those proceedings on properties that we need to get a hold of in order to demolish?
Through the chair, we can ask the county, but it's up to the county prosecutor to make that determination.
Right, so is there intent then for us to start that process then, do the paperwork? I believe it's just a piece of paper that you fill out, making the request.
Yeah, I know we're going to reach out to them. I mean, we're talking things that just happened in the last day or so. So we'll reach out to the county prosecutor and let them assess the situation and figure out what's the best legal route with this property. So that
Anita?
we don't have.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, the mayor can't answer my question because I want to make sure that we get our 50,000 versus the county getting their 5.
In the direct response, I was going to say that so that we don't have another issue where somebody's squatting on this property or sitting on the property. We want to make sure that we're made whole during this process.
Basha.
Thank you through the chair, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I misunderstood or misheard. Was it stated that originally this was scheduled for demolition Friday, but it didn't occur?
I think it was slated for this coming Friday, but then they're saying more bricks fell down, so they moved it up. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, this is exactly correct. I went there Friday night with the demo contractor who was in town doing our demo on Andrews Avenue. We then in turn saw all the bricks and I contacted the chief who then let me know. He said, it's okay, go ahead to get it down. And he said to me, when would you like to get this taken care of? And I said, how soon can you get here? He said, being I'm here and I have field dirt at YSU, I can get this started on it for you tomorrow. I said, fine, do it because I'm nervous about the building. If the fire chief is nervous about the building, then I'm nervous about the building. So we went ahead and did the demolition. And I'm hearing through, smart comments through some counsel that they think that this was some kind of shady deal.
You can say my name if you want to say my name, Mike.
No, listen, hang on.
No, let me finish.
Go ahead, Mr. Durkin.
Smart comment is fact.
I have the floor. I'm irritated now because the fire chief has an immense responsibility to the citizens of this community. And as a city, we all know we don't have billions of dollars to demo every emergency situation that occurs in this city.
Exactly. So you should
handle them.
Julius, I'll let you respond.
We handle them on a first come, first served basis to what we think is the most important and what we have money to do. When this first occurred back in June, I went right to Kyle, who can back me up on this. And I said, Kyle, we have a residential contract right now that was extremely lower than what we had anticipated. We have some emergency demolitions existing with commercial structures that we need to take care of. We did the same thing, Julius, with the property at Watt and Wood Street that occurred exactly the exact same way that you were requested for me to take care of, and it is taken care of last month, and I sent you pictures. It's the exact same situation where you have a commercial structure that the wall and the brick were separating and falling onto the street and onto the sidewalk. We took care of that structure the exact same way. The only thing different is that that structure was less than $25,000 for the demolition. That was taken care of the exact same way as this. In fact, I had a hard time even getting Ohio Edison out there immediately to get that structure taken care of because I met the fire chief there. The wall was separating and all I had to do was kick it and it would have fallen out into the street. We had it done immediately. So what I'm hearing is a bunch of questioning of the fire chief's integrity, and I'm not happy. I do everything on the up and up, and everything is done correctly. I have the proper documentation. I have all of the paperwork in this file to document this, including from the health department, of all the trash and rubbish and rats and mold in this structure. This structure had to come down. We had the money to do it, and we did it. In fact, the highest bid was over 90-some thousand. So we got this for $48,000, which was way lower than I had anticipated. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Julius.
Wasn't being smart. I'm stating facts here. The building you're talking about, the facade was literally on the sidewalk, which means if I'm walking by that building, I could have been crushed by that wall at the time. That's understandable. This building was set back, and it wasn't nothing but some of the facade falling off, straight down. Like, everybody got to understand how far back this building was set off the sidewalk and off the street. Okay? Somebody could have fixed the roof. Somebody could have got the mold out of the building, which would have happened during the renovation. This building was not in the condition of where it needed to come down immediately. And if it was, everything you just said, Mike, you ain't say none of that on the site that morning when I was there. Why not? I get it. I get it. All y'all doing your jobs. All y'all doing your jobs, and you saying you're doing this to protect the citizens, to keep people safe. Like I said, there's a building on Federal where the bricks fall onto the sidewalk where people walk every single day, and that building isn't being addressed. Well, maybe it is, but maybe it's a secret like this building was a secret, and I just don't know about it. And maybe it'll come down tomorrow morning too. Be transparent. Let the people know what's going on, because whatever is going on with this building, it wasn't a safety issue. And I'm not questioning the integrity of the fire chief. Don't keep throwing the fire chief into this, because I'm not questioning his integrity. This building simply did not need to come down, and there's something going on with this building and this property that ain't being stated. That's
Through the chair.
What I'm saying.
Through the chair.
Mike, wait a minute, through the chair.
Wait, hang on. Chief Finley, you want to respond?
Yes, whenever, and I hear what Julius was saying, but whenever we take into consideration a structural collapse, you have to take in, just like our fire trucks, you have to take into consideration 1.5 times the highest wall. That's how far you have to be back if it collapses. That's my training, 30 years. That is how we do it. 1.5 times the tallest wall or the tallest building. That's how far that you should be back. So you're telling me that 1.5 times that wall wouldn't have ended up on Oak Hill. And I'm telling you, without a doubt, it would have. And if somebody had been walking on the street in front of that building, yes, you're right. It does set back. But when you take into consideration what I know, somebody walking on that sidewalk in front of that building, even though it's far away, and somebody sitting there at the light, that could have been catastrophic for someone sitting there at that light. Bricks would have came through that window. It could have hurt or killed anybody. And then everybody would have pointed their fingers at me again, saying, well, if you knew it, why didn't you do anything about it?
Mayor, did you want to say something?
Chair, I'd just like to say that this whole process is what we do as a citizen, as a city. Now, when you start talking about transparency, that's what we do. Our side of the world, we administrate, council appropriates. Now, if Councilman Oliver can find more money for these properties that he's identified, and he can give us more money, and we can administrate those dollars to tear down those buildings, we're more than welcome to take those dollars. So, Councilman Oliver, I'd love to sit down with you, and we can figure out how to appropriate those dollars, and we can administrate for them.
Reappropriate this 48,000 and to fix another buildings instead of using it for this, because you ain't getting it back from this dude.
Anita, you're muted, Anita.
Sorry about that. Councilman Oliver is correct about one thing. If this thing was in the works, And we're not talking about, I'm not, at least I'm not talking about deals being made or anything like that. However, if this demolition was in the works, and if they had been speaking with Councilman Oliver on Friday, they should have informed him and nipped all of this in the bud. You don't talk to a person face to face or on the phone about an item and knowing full well that there's something that has to take place. Even if it's down the road, let the man know. Because the mayor's right about one thing. Yeah, we do have to appropriate. That means we got to appropriate this here $48,000 too. So let the councilman whose ward that the property is in know that it's taking place, and then inform us as well as soon as you can. Thank you. And integrity is something that you can never recover.
Julius?
Thank you, through the chair. It's like this. There are things going on in all of our wards that we don't know about and we not brought into until it's the last minute, it's the deadline, until the deal is already done, instead of letting the people's representative know about the situation from day one and having them involved all the way through. Because how in the world are we supposed to go back to our constituency and say, hey, this, and this is what's going on. How do you feel, city? And then take it back to the administration if we always brought in on the tail end of everything. If you circumvent council, you circumvent the people in the city too. And that's what this is really about.
Through the chair.
Nikki?
This is Nikki. I need to speak up because when this was brought to my attention back in July by Mike Durkin that this demo was happening, I contacted Councilman Oliver and let him know. He put me in contact with someone who was interested in the property. We did not know at the time if it was salvageable. When Chief said it was a demo that had to happen, that was the end of the conversation. With regard to what happened over the weekend, when Mike Durkin let me know that this was coming down Saturday, I text Councilman Oliver first thing Saturday morning to let him know this demo was happening. So when I got the information, I transferred that information.
Julius?
Too late. Saturday morning is when the crew was already there. When I got there, they was already there. The tractor was already hitting the wall. I'm already pulling up talking to Mike Durkin. We sat down at President Trustle's house Friday at noon when a member of the media called me and told me about this demolition. Don't make it seem like you told me this building was getting demolished, because you did not.
Through the chair, I didn't know it was coming down the next day. When I found out, is when
apparently nobody knew.
But I think part of the point is that you guys knew it was coming down because you wrote the legislation and it was in our packet Friday night. So you could have said, well, we have it scheduled for demo next Friday. It's going to be in your packet. And it sounds like you didn't even do that for Julius. Is that correct?
And it's because something else is going on.
The chair.
Mayor.
You're absolutely wrong. We talked to him on Friday and I told him, he said he had somebody that wanted to invest in this. I said, Julius, it's not up to us to make the capital deal. However, that building is coming down. It's scheduled for demo. I'm not sure the exact time. So don't tell me half the story. Tell us the whole story, Julius.
This is the whole story. The whole story.
It is not.
The media
Through the
called
chair.
me.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the actual.
I have the floor. Point of order.
Excuse me. Hang on. Everyone's talking over each other. We need to come back to order here. And we need to start talking about the actual building too, not continue going back and forth about who told who when, because that's not getting us anywhere. We can all agree that perhaps there was miscommunication, it sounds like, but the building is gone. We now have a bill for $48,000. What are we gonna do? My question, I guess, at this point is, was there an option prior to demolishing it to take if we've known about it for a year and a half, or we've been trying to work with this guy for a year and a half, we know he has back taxes owed, we know he wasn't responsive. Could we have taken the building 6 months ago, a year ago, off of him through eminent domain, through tax foreclosure, through all the other processes that we have in place, and then we could have, in turn, perhaps saved the building? Because at the end of the day, I mean, personally, I just think it's really sad that the building is gone. So I'd like to hear maybe from our legal team whether we had other options like that, and if those were pursued and they fell flat, or if they were never pursued, why?
Can I answer first, Lauren?
Sure, Julius.
That was the discussion we had. Never nothing about this building is coming down. That never happened. That never came out of Nikki's mouth or the mayor's mouth. We talked about the foreclosure process and giving a chance for somebody else to be able to come in and develop this building rather than demolishing it. That was the exact conversation we had.
So why did we wait till the final hour to have that conversation? Why didn't we pursue that earlier? Since we've been trying, we knew about, we were trying to get cooperation from this owner for, gosh, a very long time. 2 years, year and a half.
Through the chair, when I was brought into the conversation in July, it was based on the fact that Mike called me to let me know, to give me a heads up that the property was being demoed. And what Mike wanted to make sure was that if it can be redeveloped, that was my reason for reaching out to Councilman Oliver, was because Mike had received the emergency demo from the chief and wanted to make sure it could be redeveloped. Regardless, it was coming down, but he was just giving us a heads up that it needed to be redeveloped. So if demo wasn't part of the conversation, there was no sense in me even being involved or me even telling Councilman Oliver. I didn't want him to be in a situation that we're in now where he's saying he didn't know. That was the whole reason for the conversation in July, was Mike informing me that it was being demoed.
Okay, so then I'm guessing there was never any attempt prior to July to go about this a different way from the administration. And
it's not, through the chair, it's not our property. I know that there have been some offers made to the property owner. He wanted $1 million, period. It's not our property. And the only reason, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I know it's not our property, but we do this with vacant properties all the time. And you guys have been contacting him, trying to get him to clean it up for a year and a half. So we were well aware of this property. We could have gone down different avenues a year and a half ago, is all I'm saying. And it sounds like that was not something that the administration chose to do. But I'm going to move on from my question, and I have other hands up. So Councilman Ray.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, the classic case of not communicating very well. And we know this happens, unfortunately, with bureaucracy from time to time. I have a building on the house on the west side that was given to a nonprofit to rehab when there was already an asbestos abatement contract on. So I think we need to do a better job all around in communicating and to help alleviate some of these situations. So I definitely understand the frustration on all sides, and it is unfortunate. And hopefully, we can move forward, learn from this, and make sure we are finding better ways to communicate, whether it's better software notification systems or something, so we don't get ourselves in these situations.
Anita.
To the chair, to Cal. Cal, how much do we have? This has been, if it's approved, and that is a question mark, this would be paid for out of the emergency demolition fund. The demolition fund. What's sitting in there right now?
Through the chair. No, this is not going to be paid out of the emergency demolition fund. This is actually money that was allocated as part of the environmental sanitation budget for property demolition. And as a result of the last contract that Mike let coming in under what we had put aside for it, he came to me asking, given that we had savings, was it possible to then use these monies towards other commercial properties? He then identified that he had a number of them. He was going to look at what the costs were going to be. And based on the cost of each of those, he would then figure out how much he could allocate. And then when this property came in at a much lower number, he was able to actually spread those savings across, I believe, 4 properties. But he would be the one to verify that. But those monies are actually part of the normal budget that was approved by council under the environmental sanitation for demolition this year.
Okay, so how much is, through the chair?
Go ahead, Anita.
Yes, I misspoke when I said emergency. I corrected and said demo. How much is in the demolition fund?
Kyle.
Through the chair, if we're talking about the demolition fund, we have $600,000 set aside so that when we potentially look at going into 2021, if the environmental sanitation fund could not tackle demolition because of the fact that we put that $10 back into the water fund, we at least knew that we had money next year in a special fund to go out and address additional demolition during maybe a potential down year if the environmental sanitation fund did not have the resources.
Okay, and to the last question.
Go ahead.
Are there any other large scale demo projects that we have coming down the pike that you know of?
Mike, I think you would have to best address that based on your schedule.
Mr. Durkin.
Yes, through the chair, no, not at this time. No commercial demolitions that we are emergency wise. We did the one on Andrews Avenue, which we ended up not having to pay a dime out of our pockets for. We did the one on Watton Wood Street, which cost us about $24,000. And we have this one. And right now, there was a 4th one that we were talking about, but we decided not to do it.
Okay.
Mike, can you explain why the cost is quite so high on this piece of property?
Through the chair, this is actually a lot lower than I anticipated. The 3 bids that we received, one was $95,000, one was $63,000, and this was $48,000, which was actually less simply because this contractor was doing demolition at YSU and had dirt to fill, and he did not have to do trucking in his mind, and was able to save about 20. And actually, his bid would have been about $68,000 had he not had the dirt there to do it.
Well, so what are the elements of it just being high in general? Why were the bids coming back so high?
It's a large structure. It had quite a bit of brick to it, where there's a lot of hauling with regards to the brick. And also, this is done as a live load. This is a commercial structure. So on our residential structures, our street department does all the hauling and the dumping. And basically, we can handle our residential emergency demos because of the costs that we save with regards to our doing it ourselves. On the commercial structures, by ordinance, we are not allowed to do the commercial structures. So we have to bid those out. And we just do an informal bid of either 3 to 5 contractors. So that everything then has to be done as what's called a live load, which means that everything in the building is assumed to be has asbestos in it. So everything is assumed, they call it hot. So that's why the cost is so high.
Okay. Samantha.
Thank you. Through the chair. This question, I believe, is going to be for Chief. I have had this EDR experience in my ward with a fire or an act of God or nature. Can you give us a brief overview on how that procedure works? And is that the same for an unoccupied structure? Or is it you kind of follow the same procedure for every building?
Through the chair, the way an EDR works, if your house goes on, or if a house goes on a regular demolition, they can take their time and bring it down. If I go out and determine or declare that this house is basically I'm saying that the structure is an immediate life threat. It's a hazard to firefighters and civilians. When I write the EDR up for that, We don't have to, because we get people calling all the time saying, you tore down my house and nobody let me know. If it's an emergency demo request, we don't have to let you know that we're tearing it down because it is an emergency. In which case, whether it's an emergency for my firefighters to go in because of floors or ceilings or roofs, or whether, you know, most of these houses are in neighborhoods. And I know when I was a kid, I'd go in one of those houses, but if something was to happen, then one of these people get hurt. And now, you know, if we know about it, you know, again, like I said, that makes us liable. But that's essentially how an emergency demo request goes.
Thank you. Through the chair. And what's the timeline for an emergency demo as well?
That might be a little bit above my pay grade. Mike might have to answer that one.
Mike, do you know?
Through the chair, when you say the timeline, what do you mean? As far as it coming to demolition from the time the chief gives us the emergency demo order?
Yes. So the house burned next to Miss Johnson on Saturday, and
okay,
it happened. So what's the timeline on it?
Okay, so the fire demolitions, depending on the damage to the structure, if it's burned down to the ground and or if there's walls standing and things like that, those are all. I discuss those with the fire chief almost on a daily basis. The emergency demos with regards to foundations or holes in the roof, there are so many in the city. We have to just categorize them according to what's the worst of the worst. And that's basically what I do. And we try to move our equipment to an area and tackle every emergency demo in that area. In fact, we're in your ward right now. And doing emergency demos. So the residential demolitions, as opposed to commercial demolitions, are handled differently because first off, they don't affect everybody. They affect, you know, that neighborhood. So we try to get into that neighborhood and deal with every emergency demolition in that neighborhood. So that's how those work. They're not really done on, there's no set time frame. Except for the ones that actually do catch on fire, and that we do have the fires, and those seem to be the worst because at that point there are walls left standing, there are chimneys left standing, things like that we have to address right away. So for the most part, within 2 to 3 weeks, we are in that area doing those. And some we do them the very next day, depending on the severity of it, when I talk to the fire chief. So, and some we have to take a step back for a day or two because they're arson and there's investigations going on with the Arson Investigation Bureau. So we have to take a step back to make sure we don't remove anything of importance to them. So there's a lot of avenues that we have to look at first before we complete any demolition.
Samantha.
Through the chair, thanks. So right now I have 18 coming down in my ward. All of those were deemed emergency in the last.
Well, let's.
Or I mean, I want to get clarity on how this is happening. Like, how do we get from EDR?
Do we want to add that to your safety committee meeting? I think that an overview of the demolition program, perhaps emergency demolition.
I'm sorry,
is that? Hang on. I'm sorry, Anita. Anita, would it work for the safety committee?
To the chair, yes, I can.
Okay.
Add that to the safety committee.
And then Samantha, do you have a question more related to this particular one? Go ahead.
This is actually related to this particular one because, and you don't have, if you would like to, Anita, that's great. But I'm trying to get a clear understanding of how it was deemed EDR and got here and what was the timeline. Like, so if he deemed it EDR on Friday, that's the normal process. But if it's not, then I'm just not clear on how it moves so quickly. And that's what I'm trying to just get to, that clarity and be clear on how we move as a city. But if that's too much to explain right now, then it's understandable. But he deemed EDR and it came down the next day. If that's how he moves the city, that's how we move the city. And I think that people need to understand that and hear that. And that's how we got to this point.
Okay, Anita.
To the chair, this is to Attorney Limbian, by having this declared, with this being declared an emergency demolition, do we have some sort of immunity from the owner to come back at the city, onto the city to get, for damages or anything? By declaring it an emergency, do we now have immunity from a lawsuit?
Jeff?
Through the chair. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Through the chair. Yes, the short answer is yes. As I've said before, it only takes a couple $100s to file a lawsuit, and there's nothing that would preclude the owner from actually putting down the $200 and filing the lawsuit. But I believe he'd have no foundation for a lawsuit, given the chief's order.
Because of the declaration that it's an emergency demo.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that the
Thank you.
city is taken care of financially.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Realistically, do we think he's going to pay us back?
Through the chair, is that a question for me?
I guess it's a question in general. I don't even know if anyone could answer it, but if we've had no response from him in a year and a half, at least, and still no response, I'm assuming even after the building came down, is that correct? Or have we heard from him since then?
Through the chair, the law department has not heard from this owner. I think that he has other assets in the city, and I think that the city is going to take all deliberate action to recover as much money as is feasible. And I know that sounds like a non-answer, but we intend to be very deliberate in attaching all of the assets that Mr. Eisenstein has in the city of Youngstown.
So, okay, so you're going to attempt to get our money back from him. And there are multiple ways by which you can do that. And does one of the ways include becoming owners of this property now?
Through the chair, yes.
Samantha?
Thank you, through the chair. So my last part of the question is it more standard procedure to tear down the structure and seek the funding? That was going to be the last part of my question. Mike?
I'm sorry, you cut out through the chair. Can you repeat the question, Councilwoman?
Yes, is it standard procedure for us to do the work and then seek the funding?
Are you talking for emergency demolitions?
Yes, for EDRs.
It's not standard procedure, but it happened, yes.
Thank you.
Julius?
Chair, so is there an end user from this property? Usually when the city is going to take something in its possession, there needs to be an end user. So is there an end user? Like, for instance, the building that's up on Park, the reason why we won't foreclose on that, or what I've been hearing, we may have foreclosed on it already, I don't know. But I'm saying the reason why we won't deal with that property is because there's no end user for it. So is there an end user for it? And if there is, who is it? And are we going to do the same thing with the building that's such an eyesore and a nuisance up on Park Tower? Are we going to take that into our possession for reuse? Because clearly we can do some things, since we've already seen what's happened with Anthony's on the river.
Probably be maybe Nikki.
Through the chair, we are putting ourselves in what the process is.
The chair.
Once, I'm sorry. I think that was the mayor.
I'm not sure. I don't see him. Oh, Mayor, did you want to respond to that?
Through the chair, I would just say we don't have an end user at this time, and we've been following the same process, and we're going to follow the same process with this property as we do any other property.
How is the property going to be maintained at this point now? You know, we took it down, we're going to backfill it, or we did backfill it, assuming it's going to become some type of grassy, weeded area. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. Yeah, we are backfilling, grading it with finely graded topsoil, and it is going to be seeded. It will just be grass. If the owner does not take care of it, we will handle it the same way we do any other vacant land. It will be cut and it will be assessed on his taxes.
Okay. Sounds like this piece of property is going to cost us more than $48,000. Are there any more questions on this? Whatever number 7 here that we're on. Final comments. Gonna move on. Okay, Samantha. No, you're good. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay, number 8. This would be for Chief Finley again. If anyone has any questions, this looks like an EMS grant. And is this, Chief Finley, just to maintain EMS stuff that you currently already do? We still haven't expanded into, you know, or have a plan for our own EMS services?
Through the chair, no, this grant is only for $1,200, and Dan is going to purchase another AED and some EMS, probably EMS personal protective equipment.
Okay, number 9 is Chief Lee's. Looks like number 9 and number 10 are the same thing. One is authorizing, one is appropriating this grant. Any question for Lee's? I'm not seeing anything. All right, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 are all discretionary. I don't see anything there. So number 17, looks like change to an ordinance. Any questions here? Okay. And number 18 is the city charter amendment. Any questions here? Samantha?
I pretty much just have a statement, like upon kind of reviewing this and speaking with Cal, and the mayor, you said that your intention is to do a full charter review. What's the urgency with having this done right now and going to the voters
Through the chair.
Mayor.
This would have taken effect January 1st. Councilwoman Turner, I think when we talked earlier, I was probably wrong if I told you it would take effect after 2022. The law department has made it that it will be it's January 2021. And if I'm speaking out of turn, Mr. Vivo or Mr. Lemmy, help me understand that this does not fall under that same term. I think we're thinking a term of the mayor and the president of council. This would actually take effect January 1, 2021. So we wanted to be competitive and comparable with this amendment. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do so. Kyle Mizek is the finance director now, and there are people in his office or the second position that are making more than him. So I want to make sure that if we have talent like him, let's just take it out. If it's not Kyle, a finance director, we've not had to go out to find a finance director. And in my experience, that's what happened. We start looking for a finance director. The previous finance director was there for many years. So we never asked, how competitive or how comparable we are with our finance director. And I found out we were not. So I'm asking this to give council control to help make sure that we're compatible and comparable to other communities so we can keep our talent here. And all I'm asking the council is to send it to the voters.
Anita?
To the chair, well, I like the fact that this encompasses both the law director and the finance director, who are the two of the three members of the Board of Control. I like the idea that council has some sort of input on the finances of their wages to both, one can either increase or decrease the wages, and we can make ourselves more competitive. It does put something back into council's purview versus everything, frankly, being with the mayor. Because right now, so that the public understands, the Board of Control is composed of 3 people, the mayor, the finance director, and the law director, and 2 of those 3 people answer to the same person. So if with this, we too have a carrot or a stick. And we both the finance director and the law director would understand that. And we won't have a situation where we have our own William Barr.
Julius?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. So just for clarity, in the process of providing this wage raise for Kyle, which it would be well deserved, will there or will there not still be a requirement to give the law director and the mayor also a raise?
Through the chair, that
Mayor.
is through the chair. The amendment does not say a raise. The mayor is not in this amendment, so that's not part of this amendment. The amendment is giving council control over the law director as well as the finance director, being their raises, their wages. Right now, it says 80% of what the mayor makes. Council may see fit to say we want to make it 90% of what the mayor makes. So that's just giving you more control. Right now, we have to live in that confine. And if you have staff who are in your office under, that director, and they're making.
Oh, Mayor, we lost you. So, Samantha, you had your hand up. Sorry, Julius, did you get your question answered? That I know that the legislation itself doesn't have any figures in it. Like there's no numbers. So there's no raise or there's no non-raise. There's no numbers at all. It just it pulls the salaries of those 2 positions off of the charter and puts it into council's, through ordinance, into council's possession, just like everyone else's salary in the city. So then when we go through our budget hearings and we see all the salaries and we talk about that, we could then adjust the salaries at that point in time, either up or down, or not adjust them at all, leave them exactly as they are. It just gives us the power instead of it being tied through charter to the mayor's salary,
Thank you.
with no actual dollar number there.
Thank you.
Okay, Samantha, you had a question?
Through the chair.
Oh, who is that? Sorry. I think that's the mayor still trying, but he's still cutting in and out. So I'm gonna let Samantha ask her question. Sorry, Mayor.
That's okay.
So this question, I guess, would be for James or Jeff. I might be misinterpreting section 26 of the charter where it states that said salary may be changed in relation to director of finance. It says salary may be changed by the council, but not during the term of the city finance director to be affected thereby. And that was amended on November 4th of 2003. So if I see Jeff, you're sitting in front of my computer, if you can pull it up, I might be misinterpreting that. And if I am, please let me know. If I'm not, then that's it. It in plain language, to me, it reads that even though we might change it to, this, if it goes to the voters and it passes, he wouldn't take effect until January of 2022. But that's what it reads here under Director of Finance. So I just want to get clarity on that. If you can help me with that, James or Jeff.
Through the chair, I have to say I'm at a loss. But through the chair, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm at a loss. I don't have that language in front of me. I just got out of my car. If it pleases the councilwoman, I will be happy to review that and put something in writing.
Through the chair.
Oh, Mayor, yes.
How about Mr. Vivo? I see he might be looking intently through his computer. I thought that was something we discussed earlier, or because I did ask for clarification on that. Mr. Vivo, can you shed a light on that? You're muted if you're not.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Through the chair, I am looking at it and I am reading it. And let me just draw a conclusion here. I believe, from what I'm reading, real briefly, that what that is referring to is the way that the finance director is paid, but not the, I don't know that it overrides the section that we're dealing with as far as how the salary is to be set. However, that being said, this is the first time I'm looking at it from a different perspective, pursuant to Councilwoman Turner's question. And I think that may further evidence why this amendment, or why this proposed charter amendment is necessary, because we see recently there was a necessity to maybe do that. And the other good part about that is if there is a conflict, they would then be consistent. But I still think that the salary is set under section, under the other section with the other members of the Board of Control.
Anita?
To the chair, if I recall, and I hesitate to bring up the name, but I believe that former Mayor Samarone brought this up at one time about the salaries. I remember having that discussion, and that it was tied in, that absolutely that those two salaries were tied in with the mayor and not a separate thing. But I think if we do this, if there is any sort of conflict in what we do today, if we were to put this onto the ballot and then pass, then that would make us more on the same as the same piece that Councilwoman Turner has brought up, which is that we, council, would be setting the salary whenever council deemed it was appropriate for a pay increase. Is that it, Samantha?
Yes and no. If I'm understanding this, if one section of the charter contradicts another, that in my eyes sees the necessity for a complete charter review to bring it back in line instead of piecemealing it. But I would like clarity, before I am comfortable moving forward on what your interpretation of this is, because how I'm reading it, how I understand it in section 26 is that we can do this, but it's not going to take effect until January of 2022. And if your plan is to do a complete charter review during your 4th year or by the end of this year, then we can correct all of those things that are contradicting each other in one fell swoop, and instead of piecemealing it. That's the long and short of my answer.
Well, through the chair.
James? Oh, sorry, Mayor. Do you want to go, or do you want him to answer?
I want him to answer. That's what I was going to ask for, them to give me some clarification.
Okay.
Thank you. Through the chair. In reading this again and again, once again, when it says the salary, I think that this section is referring to the salary as it is established pursuant to the other section, now currently being 80% of the mayor's salary. So this talks about how it is paid, and if it were to be changed, how and I guess when the change would take in effect. Though when it says during the term of the city finance director, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that a finance director is under any specific term other than he serves at the pleasure of the mayor. So a term, I guess, according to the mayor, can be whenever he would like it to be. Now, if I'm wrong on that, I apologize, but I think what they're referring to by term is actually the almost like a biweekly pay period, as opposed to anything much more prospective. Thank you.
Samantha.
Direct follow-up. I don't have a JD, but I believe the term levels up with the mayoral term because they are appointed. No, it doesn't. I mean,
No, they can be held over.
If someone has clarity, please, but I don't think it's like pay period.
Sam, you're muted.
Is it, do you have a point of clarity for that? What term? I don't have a JD. I can't say. I mean, in plain language, when I'm reading this, it lays out to me term as in it's because they're appointed during the mayoral term. It seems.
I think you'd have to go to the finance director section of the charter and read the definition of the finance director. And if it states that he serves at the pleasure of the mayor, appointed to his term wherever.
That's where I'm at. I'm looking right
his
at.
term is, I mean, it's a question for our law department. I think whatever the law department interprets it is the correct way to interpret it, and where we have to get our advice from in the interpretation of it, unless, you know.
So thank you, through the chair. Direct follow-up. So James or Jeff, if you could review that section and just provide in writing the explanation. So we're just clear on it, because if one piece contradicts another, it's something that is a little concerning. Thank you.
James, are you clear on what it is that she's asking for clarification on? Did you freeze? He looks kind of frozen.
Oh, I'm okay.
Oh.
I was waiting for Councilwoman Davis to ask her question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, Anita.
To the chair, if a person is held over from one administration to another administration and another administration, which unfortunately we had in the past with Mr. Bozanich, that means that his contract is constantly being renewed without any set term, because he could have been fired. I mean, not fired, I shouldn't use that right word, but he could have been severed at any point without this. So there's no fixed term when they can stay and stay and stay and stay and stay. And that's what we were stuck with all those years. We were, you know, they just stayed. So I'm with Councilwoman Turner. I'd like for him to define, get a legal rule on what a term is. Mr. Beadle.
As it pertains to the finance director.
But to the finance
and
director.
The law department, the law director.
Yeah, because they're both appointed positions, but you know, they get reappointed from one mayor to another mayor.
Through the chair, I will be happy to do that and do it quickly for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any other questions on this charter amendment piece? Any other points of clarity? Okay. I have nothing else on my agenda under ordinances. Anything under miscellaneous? Okay, Mike.
Just for clarification, we are going to get that from the law department in writing, correct? Their opinion.
On the last piece there, on the charter
Correct.
amendment?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
James, will you be able to get that to us before Wednesday's meeting?
Through the chair, I hope that the fashion I issued the last one would be acceptable, and if that is, then the answer would be yes.
Okay. Okay, anything else under miscellaneous? Okay, then I need a motion for our ordinances here. Basha, you have one?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I would like to make a motion to forward ordinances 1, 3 through 18 to the council floor for consideration of passage.
Second.
Okay.
And I would also like to make a motion to send ordinance number 2 to the Cped committee.
Second.
Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We are adjourned at 6:05.